It's WKRK Radio in Murphy, North Carolina, cable TV, channel 25, and worldwide. We're at country.am. And every Monday about this same time, 11:05, we have the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office with us on the air to discuss things that are going on around the community and just for information purposes as well, community service. And today we have Chief Deputy Mark Thigpen joining us again. Welcome back.
Good morning, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to see you again.
It's great to be back.
Yeah, I know you love doing radio, so
yeah, because nobody can see me.
That's me. We were talking before. I have a face for radio.
That's exactly right. Okay. I agree with you on my side of that 100%.
So what else going on around the community with concerns to the sheriff's office?
Well, we're busy as ever. Mm-hmm. Things are picking up, and just one sign of that is our jail counts going back up. You know, it had fell off for a little while. We're back up running around 102 average population in the detention center. Of course, that's not just local residents that are housed in our mm-hmm. facility, but it includes U.S. Marshal holdings. Currently, we're holding some for Macon County, Jackson County, and Graham County, but we are seeing our detention center population rise again. Unfortunately, that's a sign that we're getting busier again, and the crime is on the rise, or maybe not on the rise, but we're putting more people in jail.
You've been in law enforcement for quite some time now. Do you see a trend as far as seasonal inmate intakes once it warms up with weather? We have more people in our area here in the spring and summer than in the winter.
Yes, it is a seasonal thing, and for years it's been that way, that you have an ebb and tide of population and call volume. Something the sheriff and I were just discussing last week, though, that as we're comparing our numbers for the last few years, particularly last year to this year, we're seeing our call volume increasing even more over the winter months than what it's been in years past. So our fear with that is, if we're increasing significantly during this winter, then what is summer going to bring us? Right. How much more is it going to increase? But yes, you do start seeing an increase as the weather warms up. We start drawing more people into the area. Then we do have a direct correlation between our population and our crime and our jail population. It all ties hand in hand.
I know we do have quite a few seasonal residents who live here as well.
Yes. I don't know that we have a real accurate count, but, the county population is somewhere in that 29,000 people, and I would dare say that we could estimate an additional 10+ thousand during our seasonal times, and that's just for seasonal homes that we have, not to include visitors that are filling up our motels and rental cabins and those kinds of things. So we have quite a spread with our population when you look at that seasonal ranges.
And one of the concerns about the casino was about an influx of traffic. Have we noticed any problems yet? Besides, I know day one that was a bad day for traffic, and I don't think that we've seen anything like that because of the casino. Has there been any kind of uptick in traffic or any problems?
There's definitely been an uptick. I don't know that it's caused a dramatic amount of problems, but I know just recently I was talking with Assistant Chief Smith over at the police department and asking them about what their impact had been, and they have definitely seen a rise in their traffic accident reporting. Fact to the point that they're discussing alternatives as to how they're going to handle their reporting process, because much like any other report, the time it takes for their officers to fill out an accident report as time goes on has increased in the complexity of those reports. So they're trying to look at their productivity of their officers, and if they're doing 4 or 5 accident reports a shift, an 8-hour shift, and it's taking them an hour a report, kind of leaves them minimal time to do proactive policing and patrolling, especially when you add in the additional call volume that they have for their shoplifters and those other things. So there has been an impact, and I know just myself, as I'm out and about during the day hours and the evening hours, and to give you a good for example, over the weekend I was on 74 near the McDonald's intersection, and looking at traffic going both directions. It was backed up from the Peachtree intersection across the bridge, waiting for the light to change. That's something that's not normal for our area. I hear people routinely making comments about the amount of time they're having to wait to get through a traffic light in the center of town at lunchtime, that they're having to add extra time to consider getting to and from lunch if they've got a specific lunchtime number of minutes because the traffic's increased. People that travel Old Ranger Road around Wilson Builder Supply commenting about how much traffic's trying to avoid the increased traffic on the 4 lanes, so they're coming down the old road, and now we have a traffic congestion problem there. So, I don't know if it's a combination of we're seeing an upswing in the economy that's bringing visitors back, along with the casino drawing more people, but we definitely are seeing a dramatic increase in our traffic counts in the area.
Have there been any discussions to possibly revise the traffic patterns, especially west of Murphy? I've heard
there's been a lot of rumors, but nothing that's been confirmed or passed down to us yet is definitive answer as to what they're looking at doing. I know there's a lot of rumors floating out there, but nothing yet that I know of that's definitely in the works.
That seems to probably be the most dangerous traffic area because of the volume of traffic, and plus the turning lane and all the businesses there, people turning in. And in some places I've tried to pull out, and there's like my car's pretty low to the ground, there's like a bush there, and I can't see over to pull out into traffic properly. So sometimes it's just I've got to chance it.
Yeah. And again, talking to people, comments being made about especially what we call Restaurant Row. Some people call it Hamburger Alley. But, trying to get back out onto the 4 lane, especially if you're trying to cross the oncoming traffic to go the opposite direction. People are talking about how it's taking them 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes to wait for traffic to break enough for them to get across the 4 lane and go the direction that they wish to head. And more signs that we definitely have an increase of traffic flow.
Being as impatient as I am, I normally just, wherever I am on that road, just take a right and then go down the street and turn around and come back.
And oftentimes you're quicker to do that than to wait to try to cross over, and safer.
Yes, yeah. It's sometimes it's hard to judge how far a car is, and especially if they're not following that 35 speed limit, and it changes to 45 at some point on that road. Yeah,
going on out of the city limits, and then you throw in the factor of people that use the center lane as a travel lane, and as opposed to a true turn lane as to what it's designed. You'll see people get in that center lane and drive for a tenth of a mile or 2/10 of a mile, anticipating making a turn. But in the meantime, if you're trying to turn in somewhere, that blocks you from using the turn lane for what it's designed for, and it just complicates the traffic flow.
And what is the proper usage of that turning lane for people that may be listening and want to know how to properly use that center lane?
The proper usage for that is to within a couple of car lengths, not a tenth of a mile or 2/10 of a mile, to drop over into that turn lane to make the appropriate turn at the business that you're wanting to turn into. The other problem you see with it is people that pull out in that turning lane and use it as a merge lane when they're trying to get into traffic, and you'll see them running with the traffic at traffic speeds, waiting for a gap, and then they look up and see someone who's truly trying to use it as a turn lane and turn in. So those are all problems that our increased traffic volume, and particularly in that area, has complicated.
All right. And a lot of people, too, we've mentioned it a time or two on the radio about school bus when they have their stop signs out, and the confusing area for a lot of people. They know if they're downtown that they stop, but on Highway 64 West, when there is that divided turn lane there, folks coming in the opposite direction do not have to stop in
That's
that
correct.
on the Highway 64 West, correct?
That's correct. Anytime that you have a divided highway or you have a center turn lane, the center turn lane is the equivalent of that divided highway, and those people on the opposing traffic side do not have to stop for the school bus.
I still see a lot of people stopping regardless.
They do. They do.
But the school buses in that area, they let the kids out and they don't cross the 4 lane.
That's correct, and that's part of the reason for that. The school bus procedures that are set statewide do not allow for student drop-offs in any location where there is multiple lanes of travel going in the same direction. The only time you'll see the students are, and they do make every effort when they're designing these routes not to ever have a student have to cross traffic, but occasionally they do based on logistics, but you'll only see that take place on a 2-lane roadway.
All right, we were talking before the show about some increased drug activity being just in open parking lots. Tell us about that.
We're experiencing an increase of open air activity, if you will. There's been more reports both to our agency and the police departments of citizens seeing people just sitting in parking lots utilizing their drug of choice. Recently, we've had several incidents where people have been seen actually drawing up their drug of choice in a needle and shooting up in parking lots, and not just in parking lots of businesses, but one specific incident that happened last week in the town here was in the area of the Health and Wellness Center and the park, which raises an even greater concern that these people are taking this drug activity in the area that our kids and children are playing in and using. And this is it's becoming such a problem that in talking to various store managers throughout the county, it's routinely that we're getting a call where needles and other types of paraphernalia are being found in parking lots of local businesses, even finding them on their shelves within the stores. And it's it's really quite alarming that that usage has become so open that they're discarding their leftovers just wherever they're at. But we're definitely seeing an increase in those types of calls that are coming into all three departments as to seeing people openly, publicly using their different drugs.
And if people are out there, say at the park or somewhere, and they do notice people shooting up in their cars, they just need to pick up the phone and call. Yes,
call 911 and give us as much information as possible. You know, if you can get description of the perpetrators, if you can get vehicle descriptions, tag numbers, because quite often they may be on the move before the officers have time to respond and arrive to that area. So, you know, once we get good solid information as to what they may be driving, who they are, or some descriptions, then even if they've left the area, we can continue to look for them and try to find them and take appropriate action if we can find them once they've left the area.
All right. Also, before the show, we were talking about discussing how the justice system works from the arrest procedure, because I know we were talking about people just, even on Facebook, just saying, here's a picture of my drugs that I do, and people are just becoming very outspoken on social media or just not trying to conceal their usage. So when the sheriff's department actually goes and makes an arrest, what happens at that point?
Well, it's quite, as we were discussing earlier, it's quite a complicated and convoluted system, but the first process is once they're taken to the detention center and the officer has secured the appropriate warrants or magistrate's orders, then they appear before the magistrate. And, quite often we hear, well, they were out before you even finished your paperwork. Well, there's several reasons for that. And the first start is the court system has developed a suggested bond schedule for all well, not for every single individual charge, but for groups of charges. So the officer has to go in and talk to the magistrate and say, this is the crime that I'm alleging that they committed. This is their criminal background. This is what I think poses a danger to society. Or this is their criminal background that shows that they routinely don't come to court, or they've they live out of state, so we feel that there's a high probability they might not return to court if they don't have a secured bond.
And that basically the bond is not a punishment. It is only just to secure they're going to be in court,
That's
correct?
correct. That is correct.
A lot of people get angry because they think this is a punishment instead of a security device.
And you're 100% correct. The purpose of the bond is to ensure your appearance back in court and to ensure the safety of the citizens of our community. So, first off, there's some responsibility that lies on the officer part to completely inform the magistrates as to the entire circumstances of this person and their background. So, if an officer just goes in and says, I've charged this person with this crime, and provides no information to show that they're a danger or they won't appear in court, then the magistrate, by their guidelines and their rules, is going to probably set a bond in the lower end, or maybe even an unsecured bond, especially if they're from this county and have ties to this community. But once that bond's set, then they go into the court system, and the next thing we hear is, the slap on the wrist kind of thing. And you kind of get into the same thing again. Several years ago, the state of North Carolina judicial system sat down and revamped their what they call structured sentencing. And the structured sentencing basically is a guideline that's handed to the judges and says, if you're charged with this crime, it's equal this many points. And then you go over and look at what this person's criminal history is in those various realms, whether it's similar crimes, different crimes, but they're given a point value for that. And then the judge basically has a metric, a matrix that says, okay, they have this crime charge against them, this number of points for their background, and where that falls tells them what the sentence range should be for that crime. So back when I started in law enforcement, and we won't talk about how many years ago that was, but the judge had a lot of latitude as to what they set that bond at, or set that sentencing at. Now it falls within a very confined box, and the judge does have some latitude to examine mitigating and aggravating factors, but they have to be very specific as to why, if they go outside that range. So it's almost preset, if you will, based on the defendant's background as to where their sentencing is going to fall. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes quite amount of time of building up their background before they reach a point that they then get an active sentence. And of course now, under what they call the statewide misdemeanor confinement program, where people previously were sentenced to the Department of Corrections, now if they're sentenced for certain crimes with an under 2-year sentence, they're now housed locally within a local confinement facility, usually within the county that they're sentenced in, depending on how full the various detention facilities are. So, we could end up with misdemeanor confinements from Graham County or Swain County if their facilities are full. But everything is, when they put that term structured sentencing to it, it is very much that. And the argument from the legislature was that they wanted to see consistent sentences that were given in the mountains as opposed to the same sentences given on the coast. But unfortunately, the downside of that for those of us that are dealing with the system all the time is it appears to have kind of weakened the system as opposed to strengthened the system.
And I'm guessing a lot of the people who are breaking the law understand how the system works and take advantage at times.
Oh, very much so. And they know that, our court system is overloaded. I don't think there's a person that would argue that from any of our judges, the clerk's office, all the way down. When you have a court docket here in Cherokee County on a district court day that has 300 or 400 cases on it to be disposed of, that's a lot of cases for our size court system. We have routinely we're seeing Superior Court cases that are being taking 2-3 years to hear because the system is so backlogged. So these people know that not only do they have the benefit of this structured sentence, but they understand how the plea bargaining works. And if I dismiss this more or work a deal to have this more severe case dismissed, I get this lower penalty case, which means I'll probably get probation or maybe minimum time for credit served in the local facility while I was awaiting trial. They know these things as well as the officers and the court personnel do, and they play the system probably as well as anybody, knowing also that if I can get out on bond for this, it's probably I'm not going to have to face the music for this for several years down the road. And we even see people playing the system once they receive probation, and maybe they think they're going to comply with probation, or maybe they know they're not, but they know that if I go for so long, I don't pay my fines, I don't pay my fees, then I can activate my sentence and go serve 60 days in the county jail, and I walk out and I don't owe the state any money whatsoever. And, it was the middle of the winter time. I really didn't have anything to do anyway, and they're going to feed me and take care of my medical needs, and what's 30 or 60 days in the county detention center to avoid all the other penalties, and they play the system very well.
Okay, I'd heard stories like that, and I just wanted to confirm.
Well, you're spot on.
Right. What is the size of our local detention center compared to neighboring counties?
We have one of the largest in the area. Compared to, obviously, Graham County, who I'm not sure their exact number, but it's somewhere around 20, I think. Swain County's new facility, I think, holds between 50, somewhere around that 50 mark. Jackson County's probably a little closer to us, up around the 100 mark, the same with Macon County. But when our new facility was built, built with the concept of also housing the federal prisoners, we're a little larger than most of the other surrounding facilities.
And the idea behind housing federal prisoners is that's a source of income, correct?
That's correct. And the same as what I mentioned a while ago, that we're holding Graham County, Jackson County, and Macon County. Anytime we hold any prisoner from anything other than Cherokee County, there's a fee associated with us housing them. So it does help offset the cost of maintaining and operating the detention center.
And there really is tremendous cost to run this organization.
When you think about the fact that you're running a 24-hour facility that has to have 24-hour security, you have your medical costs, your food. It adds up. You're running a staff of at a minimum. We try to keep a minimum of 5 people on a shift to adequately provide the security that's necessary for the facility and to operate it safely. When you start looking at that 24 hours a day just for the detention officers, then you add in transport officers who transport back and forth to medical appointments, dental appointments, court appointments, and then you also add in your kitchen staff to prepare the meals. It's a pretty large operation.
There's a lot of components like the kitchen staff that a lot of people don't think of, but that's part of this whole.
That's correct. And years ago they actually tapped the detention officers or trustees would cook the meals, and we still have a a pool of trustees that assist the kitchen staff. But when you look into now how things have changed, and we have to meet health department regulations and the state jail inspection regulations, you have to have full-time people that have specific certifications and training for providing those meals and ensuring that they meet specific guidelines. It's a pretty good operation to have to manage and run smoothly.
All right. Well, I see our time is winding down. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about before we close out our show?
I just would mention the thing that we talked about earlier. We're getting ready to head into our spring
Yes.
weather awareness, and
I knew I was forgetting something.
I think our first statewide tornado drill for state employees, county employees, just kind of check the readiness, is next Wednesday, I believe, is correct, so that people start hearing more advertisements and newspaper articles about preparing for our spring severe weather season. So just be aware, you start hearing some things about that coming up.
All right. And you're going to be working with the local emergency
That's correct.
management
We'll be
agency?
working with Robin Caldwell and the local emergency management office, as well as the state emergency management.
Maybe we can talk nice to her to get her to come on the radio with us. And
We can try that.
All right. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us this morning, and we'll do this again soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. That is Chief Deputy Mark Thigpen here at the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office, and our time is 11:31. It's WKRK Murphy.